Hey everybody, this is your Philly neighborhood therapist Alfonso, and I hope that you all are already having an amazing day on purpose, or whatever time of the day it may be. I wanted to just do this video to get it out to people who I believe, in fact, I'm positive, are suffering from what I have called election depression and election anxiety. Some of what I'm going to say is definitely going to sound scientific, but please forgive me because it's necessary to explain what we call a phenomenon. In other words, something that's happening to you that wouldn't normally happen. As a result of such a difficult election, an election that was replete with a whole lot of fear mongering, it's impacted us in a way that's now causing us to have symptoms of depression, symptoms of anxiety. What happens in the brain is that there's a region of our brain called the amygdala, which controls our fight, flight, or freeze mechanism. In other words, when the brain perceives a threat, it will either fight, run, or it'll freeze or cause us to freeze. In particular, if someone, let's say, heard a gunshot, the normal instinct is to run. Some individuals may freeze. They may not do anything, even when they hear the gunshot, knowing that they're in danger. Their bodies will literally freeze up. What happens is that the brain then releases a chemical called norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is one of those neurotransmitters. You may have heard of dopamine, epinephrine, serotonin, GABA. But when the brain is flooded with norepinephrine, it causes us to become afraid. The correlation between this is that there's also a phenomenon called classical conditioning. What happens in classical conditioning is that individuals are trained to have a response in reply to seeing something, hearing something, tasting something, feeling something. So as a result of being bombarded with the stimuli, the negative media, the fear mongering about if this person gets elected, then something so bad is going to happen. If that person gets elected, something so bad is going to happen. What I've seen is that just by looking at the face of some of our political figures, some people have that rush of norepinephrine in their brain where they become overwhelmed. They start to become fearful. They get sad. They get depressed. And in the worst case, having such a flood of norepinephrine can actually lead to having panic attacks because we have become conditioned to seeing certain people, hearing certain rhetoric, and assuming that or associating that with what we call a fatalistic outcome. In other words, we have convinced ourselves that it is inevitable that as a result of this election, something so bad is going to happen that is threatening our very lives. I've been working in the mental health field for close to 30 years now. And over that time, I've always told my patients one thing, one basic thing about anxiety. Whenever you fear the worst case scenario, the fear of that thing can actually be worse than the thing itself. What's also happening here is that we have entered into the season of SAD, seasonal affective disorder, which usually starts at the time that daylight savings ends, which corresponds with the holidays. Some individuals already suffer from anxiety. They already suffer from depression. The holidays represent a time that reminds them that they've lost a family member. Unfortunately, we're dealing with an amalgam, an unholy alliance of the sad, the anxiety that we normally fear, and an election cycle that was so cantankerous. There was so many accusations going back and forth. In my now 58 years of living, I've never heard it this bad before. What happens in the brain is that it gets locked into what we call a fatalistic or nihilistic projection. In other words, what you fear is going to happen starts to resonate in your brain as if it is inevitable. And then individuals actually start to make plans to avoid what they think is inevitably going to happen. Today, all day long, I've been putting out fires with people who are believers in Christ, people who don't believe in Christ, people who have all types of mental health disorders. I've heard people talk about how they're going to move as far north as Canada and as far south as Mexico because they believe, based upon how we were bombarded with negative information, that all of a sudden our very lives are being threatened. I had so many phone calls, so many text messages, so many emails telling me the worst about every candidate. I'm not going to repeat some of the things you all have gotten the same phone calls, you've gotten the same text messages, you've seen the same media coverage. It has served to bring out the worst in people. As a result of this, many of us will now go into a protracted or elongated period where we have to now try to de escalate. We have to try to become desensitized. What's important to do at this juncture is to try to go back to your life's normal routines. You may have to unplug from social media. You may have to turn the television off. This is a time for you to do those things that make you feel good, whether it's going out with your friends to have a good time, going to get that mani-pedi, going to get a massage. Our brain has an uncanny ability to absorb information, but it doesn't have the same ability to discharge that information. The things that we have heard, the things that we have seen have become what we call photo printed in our psyche. So that when we get up in the morning, for whatever reason, we're feeling sad, we're feeling anxious, we're feeling overwhelmed. We have a sense that doom or gloom is going to happen. Worst case scenario, this type of anxiety can actually lead to panic attacks. And that's when the brain is receiving so much stimuli that it does not have the ability to discharge it at the same rate that it's coming in. So we'll start to experience symptoms like labored breathing, hard to catch our breath. We may feel nauseated. Our stomachs may hurt. Our heads may hurt. Time may seem like it's standing still. We're hypervigilant. If we fear that one culture is now against us, we'll start looking at that other culture and wonder if they're going to shoot us, if they're going to do something to us. The state of hypervigilance that many of us are in, it will pass. What we have to do is reintroduce the thought from our mind to our brain, because remember, the norepinephrine is released in the brain and it causes us to think a certain way. Yet we can actually train our brain to accept positive thoughts from our mind when we reintroduce it to our brain. That happens as a result of speaking positivity, doing things that make you feel good, going places that make you feel good. We have to now do it ourselves because the politicians are not going to do it for us. We have to now, from our mouths into our ear, into our brain, remind our brain that you are in a state of existence that's not working for me. Now, unfortunately, some individuals who may already have underlying depression, anxiety, or even panic disorder, this may serve to exacerbate those symptoms. If you can't get back to your routine, then you may need to reach out to a mental health professional. And even at a time like this, if you have to do something like therapy or medication, do what's necessary to help you to de-escalate, decompress. Remember to just think about today. Whatever's going to happen tomorrow is going to happen regardless of if we worry about it or not. But I will challenge you to do this. Try to see the positive in every situation. Don't assume that everybody is your enemy because they didn't vote the way that you did. We have to get to a place where we still believe in basic core decency and humanity. It's not all lost, and neither are you. You remember that when you wake up tomorrow, try to begin your day with a happy thought. Do something that makes you feel good. Don't turn on CNN or MSNBC or any of the other news channels that you know is just going to bombard us with more information about the election. Or, as the actor said in one of my favorite movies, you may just need to unplug. You know what I love to say. I love you. God bless you.